Welcome back to the Respected Arrive podcast. I'm Tedward, and man, oh man, winter is over. Thank God. It has been a long one, and it's actually been really difficult to keep the podcast going because of winter and COVID. It's hard. It's really hard to convince people to come out to your basement in the middle of nowhere, because that's essentially what this recording studio is, except that may not be the case for too much longer, because our friends over at Garage 42 in Woburn, Massachusetts, I think we can let the cat out of the bag a little bit on this one, but they are opening a new facility in Acton, Massachusetts. And they've actually got a lot of construction projects going on between Ren Scott and Garage 42, which is very exciting. One of the things I think this is going to happen. Don't hold me to it. Don't hold them to it. But I think there's going to be some sort of podcasting studio happening, and we'll be able to just host things there. It'll be a lot easier and more. I mean, who doesn't want to go to a place with a bunch of supercars to come and record with this friendly face? So I'm excited about that. But almost more importantly than that, I have a new car. I traded my E92 M3 for a Honda Civic. What a bizarro world this is. But no, I did. I bought a 2022 Honda Civic Si. Surprisingly hard to get. I don't know anybody else with one of these cars. I don't have anyone to commiserate with or talk about it with, because I personally don't know a soul who has gotten one of these. It's bizarre when you're driving a Honda Civic after driving like supercars for work all day, and people are giving you the nod in the Civic, because it's like nobody's seen one. So it does have this bizarre cachet at the moment, which is kind of fun. And I find that very entertaining, that a Civic has that sort of like je ne sais quoi on the road. But I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I love the fact that there's just less hassle and worry. And now my relationship with Wild Motorsport is going to be a lot more fun, because I do still have my E39 M5, and that means that when I'm using Wild Motorsport, it's not going to be because I need to get to work tomorrow and my car is failing. It's going to be because, hey, let's do a suspension upgrade on the M5, or hey, maybe something is wrong with the M5. Take it for as long as you need it. Don't worry about it. It really sucks to have a daily driver that you're like completely reliant on to do your job, and you have to take such large chunks of your month out just to keep the car alive and running. So while I will miss my M3, I will not miss a 110,000 mile M3. I think I miss it for being like a 50 or 60,000 mile car. I don't think I miss it as being a 100,000+ mile car. So anyway, good things happening right now. Loving my Honda. There's videos in abundance on the channel with that car at this moment, so we're going to be doing more. I'm going to be doing more. Why do I say we? Sometimes I say we as if this is like this big operation. It's like, it's me. It's just me. I got a great network. I got great clients. I got good people in my life, but when it comes down to it, it all relies on me picking up the mic or the camera. So I'm going to be trying to do as much of that as possible. Just touching in. We're not going to make it a Civic channel. Don't worry. And there's still German cars in the fleet. I've got the 911 and the M5 up at Garage 42 right now. They're going to be coming out soon. Got to do an oil change on the 911. And the M5, now that it's like freshly ceramic coated and all that stuff, paint corrected from Craft Detailing, I think we got to do the same thing on the Civic. I'm excited to bring both of those cars, the 911 and the M5, to some shows this season. But it's about the drive. As much as I love a good car show, it's always about the drive. But the one car show you can always find me at is going to be that Lars Anderson Cars and Coffee. I usually go up there with Boston Motorsports because they often give me dibs on whatever is in the showroom. So, not going to complain about showing up in a bright yellow McLaren 765 LT Spider if they happen to get one in. So, fingers crossed. But that's the deal. You can always find me at the Lars Anderson Auto Museum at the Cars and Coffee events. So, some people ask, are you going to put on a show of your own? Probably not. That sounds like a lot of work. I would rather just be at a show that exists and is already successful. But I like to meet you. I've been actually seeing more and more of you guys lately in the wild, which is interesting because this is not something that like typically happened often. I mean, of course I would see you at a car show. I mean, that's where we're concentrated. But lately I'm starting to see more people at like gas stations or taking pictures on the highway. I've been approached at like an empty beach in Narragansett, and I'm always surprised that you guys even recognize me. I don't show my face that much, but I appreciate it. You're always so friendly. It means the world to me that this is kind of a thing now. I just hope that I'm always friendly. Well, my big fear is that like I've just had a big blowout fight with someone, and then like suddenly someone walks up and is like, "Hey, you're the guy from the YouTubes," and I'm gonna have to try to grin and bear it. But no, that has not been the case. So I do appreciate it. It's always good. And whenever I see you guys in those types of scenarios, I always try to hand out some merch, like a sticker or something, just if I've got it on me, just because I do appreciate it. Today, because I've bought a Honda. We've got the Honda boys on. We've got Powen of the YouTube channel Pow Winning, and he is a important employee of Acuity, the aftermarket Honda shifter company. They do a bunch of stuff, but the shifters are what I think of when I think of Acuity. They also sponsor Eddie's race car. You know Eddie. You know him. His Type R, the 10th gen Type R. It's got Acuity emblazoned across this, and you usually see me wearing an Acuity sweatshirt. They always have good merch. But I've got Eddie and Powen on the show today. And this is an exciting show because it's not like a specific thing. Like we talk about a lot here. I'm good friends with both of these guys. Powen has helped me a lot in the past, and Powen is a great wrench. He's a very he's an incredibly talented DIY kind of guy. And he's also someone who never says no to anything. If you said like, "Hey, I really need a hand switching out my exhaust on my car," he'll be there. And he's done that for me. He's done that for a lot of us. So, don't take advantage of Powen because he will say yes, but I'm glad to have him on the show. And I want to let him kind of tell his story because he's a mechanical engineer. He went to UVM and he's made his way into this sort of like marketing space of Honda aftermarket parts, but he's still doing his YouTube thing. He's still very successful at what he does. And I like this story because it shows what you can do if you've come away with a degree and you've started working in a field that maybe you're not that thrilled with, maybe you're not that happy with, and you still can come away and migrate into something that you're really passionate about. And Powen is all about that passion. We've been meaning to film this. We've been meaning to record this for quite a few weeks now, between weather, family problems, all kinds of stuff. It's just been a calamity. We finally got to sit down and have this conversation, but enough about me. Let's get into it. Here's Powen and Eddie. Welcome. We have Powen. We have Eddie. We got a couple of actually, not a couple of Honda boys.
We are the Honda boys.
We got 3 Honda boys, and I'm the only one who drove a fucking Honda here. Got an Infinity rat trap outside that makes you look like you are ready to run from the police.
I am.
You look like you host those street takeovers in Oakland when you drive that car.
I may or may not have.
That's your vibe. And then you came in an M3 and
yes, sir.
Literally pulled into the driveway and the hood is already up.
Yes, sir.
Which is, it was sweet satisfaction to look out the window and see an M3 with the hood up upon arrival and feeling like, yep, this is why I made choices. Mm-hmm. But you do have an 10th gen SI.
Yes, I do. I got the 2020, so it's kind of like that last, I guess, top technology spec that you can get for that generation. So it has all the bells and whistles with like Honda Sensing, which you have actually in your 11th gen as an entry, the first SI to hit the States in the 11th gen. And I'm kind of jealous.
Do you have heated seats?
I do. I do. I'm sorry.
See, this is the thing. That Acura's coming out with this Integra, and they're limiting things. They're like, you want that? You're gonna have to spend another $4,000 on this hatchback. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I don't care. I don't even care.
You know what you do? You go buy one of those heated blankets.
Or better yet, I'm wearing one of these heated sweaters.
Are you kidding me? Okay, you guys can't see this. Powen literally just revealed that his zip-up hoodie has a light on it, and you are battery-powered.
Tony Stark over here.
That is the ultimate skinny dude flex, where you're like, I am a small, I'm like a small dog shaking, but now I'm not because I got this heated fucking...
You're going to see me with my hands in my armpits all the time.
My people...
The only warm spot on my body.
I like really cool. How long does the battery last?
On the lowest setting, which is on right now, probably about 6 to 8 hours.
Oh my god!
So
what?
If I'm like in the middle of my garage, I'm working at my parents' it's unheated garage. Like it's pretty cozy to work in. But on the maximum setting, which is like borderline, like it can kind of burn you if you were to like lean against it. You're talking about maybe 3 hours. So if you're like in a blizzard and you need some warmth to just get some cover and.
Have you slept in it?
No, I refuse to. That's what I'm scared of. There have been nights where I haven't been. 100% sober and just, like sitting on the couch and I forget that it's on and I wake up and kind of like my back's kind of itchy.
Ooh, what's going on here?
Hot back there.
The radiation. All right, so as you can tell, we're all good friends. We've known each other for a long time, and I actually met Powen I met you through YouTube.
I think if we never had the Apex event, like a long
No,
time
it was
ago.
before that.
Yes, it was.
It was like
Because
an
we
Eli
were
thing.
we were actually one of the earlier guys that got into the event because we were friends with Eli and all that stuff.
Yeah,
But
I met
remember
you
now, we
through
met before
Eli
that.
because
Yeah.
there was like the old Ignition Tube days. Tedward was just like a
Yes.
bizarro fever dream of a vlog, and then I was starting to be like, whoa, like there's these other YouTubers nearby. So we had like Max and Alex doing Wastegate Warriors. We had Ignition
Oh
Tube.
my God.
Yeah.
Wow. I forgot
We had,
about that.
I will never forget about that. We had Ignition Tube, which was Powen and Eli, or it was Eli, but Powen, you were like a staple of that because to me, now at that generation, it was like you guys were the local TJ and Calvin.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I mean it's funny because like I'm actually still pretty close with Calvin on the other side. I haven't really touched base with him in a little bit, but every time I visited California, it's funny enough, I actually go visit Calvin before I visit TJ and the Throttle Crew.
Absolutely.
He's kind of like my ticket into the Throttle Crew.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing is like Calvin's the one that when we did do that like more successful Apex event, he was the one I hung out with him more than probably anyone else other than like Chris and some of those guys.
And I think the reason why I resonated with Calvin so much is because we were kind of on that level where we resonated as a helping hand almost, and we just wanted to be a part of, building and working on people's cars. Like at the time, I never had an intention on making a channel. I just wanted to help my friends.
Well, except for the fact that you not only were you like, oh, I'm a helping hand, you guys were like nice and funny. And so all right, enough of Calvin. We're talking about you. You brought a lot of knowledge and I guess let's say fearlessness and problem solving to the Ignition Tube thing, which is how I discovered you. I was like, whoa, like, I can see Eli having dreams of like, ooh, this is the project I want to do. And him having enough know-how to be able to get the job started or like know what he needs and this and that. Like he knows what to do. But I think there were a lot of like fabricating things that you were like, give me the fucking saw and I will cut this off for you and we will make sure this is going to function.
It was, yeah, I feel like out of the friends that I started out working on cars with, like I come from a background where like, just give it a go. If you screw it up, you screw it up. And if you don't, you learn something. And I think that's kind of how I was always raised to pursue things. Like, to be honest, like my parents are working really hard 24/7 in terms of managing a family restaurant.
Rice Cube, Lexington.
Thanks for the plug. But yeah, like they didn't have time to teach me how to work on a car. My dad didn't even have enough time to teach me how to drive stick. So like I was kind of up on my own to really learn all this stuff.
Yeah, so where did you get the balls to like start tearing into things? What was the car? And were your parents like receptive to this? Like I know in my house, like you're here, you're looking around. This is my parents' house. This is not a very welcoming place for me to tear down a car.
It's very interesting because I wouldn't say when I first started working, my dad was the person that kind of imposed working on cars in our driveway in our family, and it was mainly out of need-based stuff because there was a period of time where we were pretty affluent in the restaurant business. The restaurant was doing great, and then 2008 happened, housing market crash, and my family was borderline needing to sell our house
For
and
sure.
all that stuff. And
and you live in like I can't buy into that.
yeah, well, we bought in when it probably was already expensive, and now it's atrociously
I
expensive.
mean, there's
to
no
maintain.
way I'm living there.
Yeah, and my parents are trying to downsize and retire eventually, so
Yeah.
they're just trying to take a couple years, figure out the logistics and stuff. But I mean, honestly, my dad started working on Gertrude, the boosted 3 Series that you have on the channel.
Yeah, the convertible that you you put a big old snail on it and
Yes, sir.
airbags, and it is definitely like the Powen car, which is weird because now I think of you as the Honda boy, even though I
Yes.
totally know you as this like BMW thing.
I want to say the BMW stuff has given me the foundation of where I'm at today. I credit a lot of my achievements from the early days of that stuff. But anyways, my dad had that car. He bought it brand new off the showroom
That's
floor.
pretty badass because that's a 325.
325i. It was literally the model that, like, I think one salesman drove from Illinois and then put it in a showroom in BMW of Sudbury, I want to say. I'm not sure exactly which dealer. But here's the funny part, though. He traded in an E30 M3 for it.
What?
And
your
that's-
dad had an E30 M3?
Yes, and there's one picture of him that I can't ever find, but he was a baller pick, and it's funny because like he looks almost like me in that picture. Same like hairstyle, when I have long hair.
Yeah.
You know, the longest hairstyle.
I still, you're wearing a hat right now, but I still
Oh, yeah.
picture you with a man bun.
Yeah, see, like
When
My
I
God,
had
I
lo-
haven't seen that in years. I haven't thought about you. With
When
a
I
man
had
bun.
long hair, though, in my head,
You were
I was
Powin?
Powin. I know I didn't look anything like
I
that
was
when I
gonna
looked
say,
in the
keep on
mirror.
dreaming,
It's
buddy.
never going to happen. But in my head, I'm like, I'm as cool as fucking Powin circa 2014.
Yeah.
Well, side story. The only reason why I got rid of it was because one, Eli got really annoyed when we were filming together because my hair would brush debris into his camera lens and his face.
Functionality, long hair is bad.
Yeah. Oh my God.
It's a lot of work.
Because I work underneath a car in my driveway, so every time I turn around, like the hair literally like is like a little cleaning brush, and so
Oh
I
my
would take a
God.
shower, and my mom would be horrified at the debris that just washes down the drain, and then she just beg for me to just like hose yourself down with something before you come inside.
Oh my
But anyways, yeah, like my dad started working on that car because the history of that car was also jumpy. I was actually just talking to my girlfriend about it. My dad bought it brand new. He drove it for a couple years. Then I got a little bit older where he had to take me around to more places. So we ended up getting, I think, a minivan and then, some family
Yeah.
sedans. And then he gave that car to my uncle, who at the time was probably in his early 20s. So he was, like very aggressive and like very out there. So he kind of beat on the car for a little bit. He actually got it stolen too. That's a story I don't think I told you guys. He left the keys in the car to party for like 5 minutes. Somebody just walked off with the car or drove off with the car.
Sounds about
And then
right.
they found it downtown abandoned in the middle of I think it was either like Arlington or somewhere around Billerica in
Yeah,
Arlington, that area.
that's
And then
crazy.
just got back in the car with the spare set of keys and drove back. So that's why I only have one set of keys for the car too. But anyways, he started working on it because he abandoned the car at our other residence in Billerica. And basically the car sat for almost a decade. And then when I was in like middle school, he decided to bring it back out and work on it.
Sure.
And that's kind of what got the bug going.
And you were like, ooh, I could learn how to do this. I could do that. And then,
Yeah.
and then did you just like kind of inherit the car? It was like, oh, here, Powin, like
Yes.
this is what you'll be driving.
Because I remember the first time he brought it home, he brought it on a tow truck because he tried driving it, just straight up starting it and driving it, and the radiator and coolant hose just kaboom, exploded.
On a BMW?
Yeah,
I've
how
never heard
surprising,
that
right?
I don't know about that. That doesn't
so.
add up for
He
me.
was lying.
I have no idea
Yeah.
what you're talking about.
So I think the
What a-
very yeah,
That's a fluke.
it's just,
That's a fluke. That thing
Can't happen.
must have been a piece of shit.
yeah.
Lemon.
But yeah, the very first I think things we worked on were radiator, coolant hoses, water pump, and alternator. All things that the average I think DIY guy would likely tackle within,
Sure.
like as like a project car that you're just kind of like whatever.
But
you
also
know?
like a pretty satisfying project because there's a lot of mess involved in that. Like
Yes.
you really like when you replace a cooling system, you very much feel like you are dissecting a car.
Yeah,
you know,
and-
like you're not going that crazy in reality. You're removing a hose and like unscrewing a radiator and ripping it out.
And now that I think about it, it's funny because my dad at the time was very strict in not letting me touch certain things. And I think my fearlessness came from his kind of like, I'm just going to give it a go, but you be careful because I don't know how dangerous this is. I don't know if you should be touching this. He wore gloves, but I always kind of held the tools and
Oh, see,
and helped
mine
him.
was the opposite. Mine was more like this, especially with that car, it would have been like, I know what I'm doing. I know you could try it, but if you fuck it up, this car's expensive. So don't fuck it up because we are already living above our means we have no business with this M3 or this BMW.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So what are you doing? You could fuck it up.
This is the end.
This is
Yeah.
it.
I think my dad didn't really care like success or failure how it went was because he brought the car back from like a midlife crisis itch. You know?
Sure.
He couldn't get that motorcycle, or he wasn't a motorcycle guy, so the closest thing to it was take back that old convertible that he used to give to his nephew to
Now,
drive.
luckily, your dad probably doesn't know what Bring a Trailer is.
No.
And so that means he's not looking at E30 M3 prices.
I tell him every day. I kind of like, Dad, man, like if you hadn't traded it in, we would have been rocking with like at least a $25,000 shell.
Yeah,
at
for
the
sure. I
very
mean,
least.
they're
Yeah.
like comfortably like 85 grand now
Yeah.
for like not a great one.
For a beater.
For like-
a track
For like a
rat one.
driver.
And
Yeah.
the story behind how he got that car was interesting too, because basically he bought it out of spite because the salespeople didn't give him the time of day. If you see my dad and you know my dad, he wears.
So he was like, "Oh fuck you! I'm buying the best thing in the
yeah,
showroom."
he pulled out. I think. Well, the story goes is he walks in with like like a really baggy white shirt on, like cargo shorts. If you know my dad, he wears loose fitting clothes all the time. So he just looks like a weekend guy that's about to go golfing, like all the time. But he walks in and nobody gives him the time of day, and he gets pissed, and then he just pulls out the fuck you money, platinum, like Chase or whatever platinum card at the time was, and like glimmers it, and then the salesperson across the room is like, "Oh, sir, please sit down. Here, would you like a coffee?" And he goes like, "Screw you.
I
I'm
don't
buying
want
that
the
car."
I don't want the coffee. I want the car.
Yeah, and he's like, "I'm getting that car." And then he was like, "Oh, do you want?" It's like, "No, buying that car." And then he leaves within like it was like a pretty top spec. I don't know exactly what it was, but he keeps saying it's like he throws the word Evo out there a lot. So I don't know exactly if it's just him talking out of his butt. But the one that he had,
Like, the thing is, though, he
was-
wouldn't know that word associated with that car
I know.
if it wasn't.
I
So
know.
I was gonna say unless
Eddie's
unless
eyes just
he
lit the
knew
fuck up.
what he was buying, which very well could be. It most likely was an Evo.
I mean, it could have
Yeah.
just been sitting there. And, like, the only way, the wing is the easiest way to know it's
Yes,
an
it
Evo,
had the
right?
wing.
It
Yeah.
has,
I
like,
thought it
that.
was an
Like,
Evo.
it's got that, like,
Yep.
separated wing that kind of, like,
That and the
turns up a
interior
little
had,
bit.
I think, different seats.
Yep.
I think it had a little different seats
and
to it.
his was in silver too. So he
I'm,
loves.
see, that's as badass because I always just think of them as black and red. So, like,
Yep.
or sometimes white, but, like,
White.
a silver E30 is pretty badass.
That could have put you through college, Pound.
There's probably like 12 million. Actually, there's not enough people that listen to this. There's probably 12 individuals who are like, Evo's never came in silver.
I know.
Idiots.
Exactly.
Yeah, I have no idea, but I know
I
that
have no idea.
I know that car, he already has his whole host of stories too. Like he did a street race once with my mom when they were dating, and
Nothing like an S14 street racing where it's just like, we're in the top tier BMW and it's slower than everything that's come out before this in the world. Like, it's so bizarre. It's like
That-
not a fast car, but
No,
somehow,
man.
but it's like, it's just a chuckable, it was a homologation car. So it was a chuckable track rat, but like,
Yes,
it
sir.
was a momentum car.
The only reason that car was built was for racing.
Yeah.
The engine for racing. That car on the street probably is
It's a
slower
pain in
than
the ass.
most Camrys.
Probably a total pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Camrys are always the benchmark for speed for me.
Oh,
if
yeah.
you are
V6
slower,
Camry.
if you are slower
Or
than a
Accord.
V6 Camry, you ain't shit.
I mean, nowadays though, I'd say an Altima V6 because that's what everybody be rocking.
Well,
these
yeah, but
days.
those are the fastest cars in the world.
I know.
I saw a tow truck today, a flatbed, and it had an Altima on the flatbed and it had Altima towing it. Like, or they were towing an Altima.
Oh my
yeah,
God.
and I was like, this is, and they probably fucking crashed into each other. I bet he picked them up in one accident.
No hezzy.
dude, surprisingly around my area, it's not only Altimas, it's like Dodge Challengers.
Oh well, that's
Oh
second
my
on the
God.
The
list.
second you see those yellow bumper guards, you're fucked.
Dude, it's not like no hate to these Challenger guys,
Oh, no.
but the ones near
Welcome
me
it.
in
No,
Everett,
no, that's
Like,
what's keeping.
We want
Dodge in
engagement.
business.
We want engagement. We want
Right.
emails. I want angry people text.
there's these two that first of all, there's two Challengers. One is like I think the whatever top tier like SR whatever.
Hellcat?
Hellcat, yeah.
demon.
But anyways, both of them double park in my garage in a compact car zone, and they just leave the cars there. They don't even have a parking puck to
Sounds
get
like
in.
a Dodge owner.
It's just like there's a lot of people in the car people in my garage don't even double park. They actually are the most polite people in the parking garage. It's these people with just like the Porsche Cayman or the random Mercedes. Even a random Mitsubishi like SUV was just double parked like all the time.
Like,
And
they
I'm
take
just-
up two spaces.
They take up two spaces on
Are-
purpose in a compact car zone. And I'm
That's
just like,
super frustrating.
yeah, and it's not that my rent isn't cheap, but it's not as expensive as Boston. But I pay $100 a spot.
Those are the kind of people who
know,
like
a
they
month.
lose their dog and they put up like $500 reward posters everywhere, and then you bring them their dog. They're like, "Here's $5. What are you gonna do? Keep my dog? Fuck you."
Yeah, it's just like it's just frustrating. But anyways, that's a separate
Well-
story that I can rant about for another hour. Or
You
so.
know, Charger and Challenger owners are, I would say, known for their burnouts and their donuts.
And hey, they do burnouts well.
they
do.
they burn out their lives and then they burn out their tires. So now,
I'm trying to be the nice guy.
hot
on this
take.
podcast.
I wanted to just interject
Yeah.
with you two talking about, working on cars with your parents.
Oh yeah,
Because I never had that. You two were like, oh, I got to build cars with my dad. I never had that.
well, that's a stretch. I was yelled at most of the time.
Well, you were yelled at, but
Yeah,
you
me
still
too.
had the experience. I don't know how I learned other than like taking auto in high school.
Well,
which
I
was
probably
just
would've-
stealing.
I would
crap.
I would have done better though, because it would have been an encouraging environment where it's like, here today we're going to learn this process, and by the way, you're going to learn it the correct way. Versus
Oh,
yeah.
wait,
like,
I didn't learn anything in that,
So,
in that class.
I was very grateful because not only did my dad kind of get the itch in me to like kind of work and kind of pursue working on cars on my own. After I spent a summer and a half with him because like it bled into the next summer too.
Of course.
Working on that
like
car.
every build.
Yeah, because he just he doesn't have he works like 13-hour days at the time, so he only can do it for like an hour at a time.
And
so.
the patient for like a little boy sitting next to him handing him a wrench is probably razor thin.
Oh, actually, I was totally fine. It was weird. I have ADHD pretty bad, and now that I look back at it, my dad always recognized that when I actually was in love with doing something, I was laser focused. But every other instance, I was a little shit. I was all over the place. Energy, always needed attention. And
That's
stuff
always
like
the
that.
story, though. That's always the story of like, oh, I knew you liked it because you weren't a horrible nightmare.
Yeah, like I wasn't fussy. Like I knew he would be stubborn and kind of like frustrated working on certain things.
Yeah.
But I always looked at it as an open mind, and I think that's kind of what developed my perspective with working on my friends' cars because. Well, here's the thing. If I get frustrated working on it, I feel like my friends, all they want to do is try to calm me down because whenever they tackle their own projects, I always like being the calm perspective and seeing like, okay, this broke or we can't do this. And I'm frustrated, but at the same time, I'm still always thinking of different ideas to try to make it work.
Well, I'm always impressed. Like you even just did the exhaust on my M3. You took off the stock muffler and put it on the courses. And like, it's not like a huge job, but it's still like rusty hangers and clamps and shit.
And frankly, I remember it was in the early days of Renscott too, so we didn't have all the right tools, and I kind of worked with what I had, and that's kind of what I always am used to. Is I always complain to my girlfriend where they're like, this didn't go as the plan because I didn't have the right tool, and I found out halfway through, so I had to make something work. And then sometimes she jokes, like, do you even like this? Like, are you even enjoying it? And I was like, I enjoy the challenge, but I know that throughout the way there, it can be very frustrating.
It sounds like in high school when you're like, you do a sport or something and you're like, come home crying and your parents are like, you don't have to do it. You're like, no, I love it.
Yeah, it's just kind of like that.
You're like, just fucking
there's
quit.
something that keeps you going. You know, it's just like, it's not the failure. It's just like, oh, I want the satisfaction of getting it right.
So all right. So fast forward. Now you've inherited this 325i. You've bagged it. You've put a turbo on it. You've learned a lot of like what's going on, and you've kind of become a staple in this small YouTube community with Eli. I mean, now you go into those Burlington car meets. People know you. You maybe didn't know when to say no enough because I watched you work on everybody's car.
And I still do.
It's insane. Like, please do not. You guys should follow Powen on Instagram, but do not ask him to work on your car because he will say yes.
I was going to say, actually, Powen, can you help me fix something on my car this week? I'm just kidding.
No, but you actually probably do need
you're
to.
actually helping me this weekend picking out a racing helmet.
Oh,
so
yes,
that's going to be fun. But
that.
we can save that a little bit later.
But here's the deal. Now, like, all right, you graduate high school, you go to UVM, and you're going for mechanical engineering.
Yes, sir.
We get a degree.
Yes, sir.
We go to some like HVAC controls company.
Yes. So I basically, during my senior year, I had like, it wasn't not stressful because, engineering programs are pretty much equivalent to like medical programs where it's just like the rigor's insane, late nights, all-nighters.
And at UVM, you've also got people in the school who aren't engineering majors who are likely also your friends, and they're just fucking off and doing whatever they want.
Totally.
And you're like, man, getting high and drunk tonight would have been really fun.
Yeah.
It's hard to graduate.
Yeah, my party time starts after I finish all my work at like 2 a.m. So I just have like a 6-hour delay for my insobriety. But anyways, yeah, like sorry, where were we going with that? Yeah, HVAC.
So you graduate, you do your thing,
yeah.
like you make it through school. Congratulations, good job.
Yes.
And now you're like, I gotta get a job. I'm gonna go work at this place.
Mm-hmm. So it's funny you say that. Basically, the reason why my senior year was stressful, but it went easy for me, was because I knew I had a job lined up.
Right, because you had been like interning and working with these guys.
Yes, and the only reason why I got that internship was because, Nico, right?
Yes.
His dad, Rick Garcia.
Oh.
He was working on his his son's Nico, his E36 M3 at the time. That one was the one that had, I think, like 300,000
I drove that car on the channel.
One.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Impressively reliable for that mileage.
Is that thing still around?
No.
Long
gone. But anyways, he was working on the car one day, and I was just driving home from, I think, college or doing delivery.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, I was just doing a delivery for my restaurant. And after 3 of them, there was no deliveries. I saw them working on it, stopped by and said, hey, what are you guys working on? I have the same car down the street. And we kind of like talk a little bit back and forth. He finds out I'm an engineer XYZ. 2 weeks later, he needs help doing a clutch install, and I gave him advice, which he didn't follow, and then I ended up having to go over and help him.
Is that the most? And you're the only person that someone could go, I didn't do the thing, and you'd be like, well, I did tell you so, but I'm going to be nice about it, and I'm also going to install your new clutch.
Yes, and so basically, long story short, ended helping him take out some stripped hardware around the pressure plate because it was aluminum screws.
Sure.
And he basically didn't believe me and say, I'm just going to use, an Allen bit and just go to town. He went to town with the right size bit, stripped instantly.
Done.
And I told him, I was like, you're going to need heat. And now that you stripped it, you got to hammer in a Torx bit that's a little bit bigger. But funny enough, when you hammer it in, it's actually going to grip it better.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
And yeah, we got it out. And after that, he was like, I'm going to put in a good word for you, get you an internship. Got the internship. Then got the interview after college, and then I just started.
So a clutch job got you a job.
Yes, sir.
Better
In
than a
construction.
hand job.
And yeah, oddly enough. But, maybe like a lot of engineers, we end up in our first jobs and it's not our dream.
Yes.
Sounds
So
like a lot of people.
I'll tell you, the industry taught me a lot of good things in terms of like what is fair pay, like what is fair compensation, what is worth it, what is benefits, what is worth investing in. And I feel like throughout that entire time, it gave me enough of an income to supplement my hobbies. But what I realized really quickly was that even though I was waking up at 4 or 5 in the morning to go to jobs by 6 or 7, all around New England, I would get home around 3 or 4, which is early, right? But I'd be exhausted. And by the time I get to work on my car, I'd probably finish around 7 or 8, then I edit my videos, and it's probably like midnight. So like there was a period of time where when I started YouTube, I wanted to start a YouTube channel after college. And that was what was most important to me in terms of my hobbies because it was kind of like a natural propagation. On Ignition Tube, everyone asked me to like, hey, Pound, you should do stuff on your own channel and talk more detail about the builds that you do because you kind of just, Eli, he's all the kind of storytelling. He's really good at storytelling, but a lot of the times the detail gets cut out.
Right, and you're doing these incredibly detailed step-by-steps.
Yes, which nowadays, and we can go down the rabbit hole later on in this, but like nowadays I'm kind of backing away from that just because I want more time in my life.
Well, you have to balance that.
And
you need to be able to be a functional human being.
And that was the biggest struggle I had getting out of college, hitting the ground running with a full-time job because I really wanted to work on my YouTube stuff. I was single at the time too, so like I was trying to, just date around. It's hard.
Hard to date when your car's in pieces in your parents' garage.
You just wanted to fuck around.
Yeah, I wanted. But yeah, it's just like it was very interesting because what I realized.
Pound's shy.
Yeah, I'm trying.
His girlfriend's like, he ain't shy.
Anyway, I've realized real quick, time was the biggest value. Or the thing that I had the most value with that I didn't get.
Right.
And so I realized real quickly that in this industry, based on how much time I need to commute, how much time I need to dedicate, I can't put a price tag on compensation in order to actually feel like I can have a healthy work-life balance. And funny enough, within that same period of time, when I had the channel, it was probably maybe a year and a half old at this point, I got the Honda Civic.
The 10th gen Civic Si.
And that was the 2017 one, pretty much the first iteration of it.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
Yeah, and the only reason why I got it was because the monthly payment came out to exactly the vehicle allowance from the job.
Oh,
so
okay.
I would have never gotten that car if I didn't have a vehicle allowance.
Total luck.
And it was also coincidental because I was driving one of my family cars, and that car was also going down the gutter.
Right.
The Mercedes?
It was the Mercedes.
I love that car.
Which car was it?
It was the E430.
It was the E430, the worst generation E-Class.
Yeah,
with the
was,
V8. It
yeah.
was rotting.
I think I remember it.
It sounded so good, though, at the end because the exhaust had rotted away.
Oh, my God.
There's nothing like an open exhaust Mercedes.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
They sound mean.
They sound mean, yeah.
But, yeah, that car, it just, as I drove it, back and forth, like 50 to 100 miles a day, that thing deteriorated. And
so how did you find Acuity? How did you find this?
So here's the thing. I got the Civic because here's the thing. I was torn between the Ford Focus ST and the 10th gen Civic Si.
Right.
And I kind of went into the 10th gen Civic Si speculative and being like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to test drive it. If I don't like it, I'm going to try the Ford next. I test drove it, instantly fell in love with it because I was impressed by how it didn't really feel like a Honda when you drove it. And I was used to the old hatches and the lightweight, feeling like a go-kart feeling.
Yeah, it's going to blow away on the highway.
Yes, and what I noticed on the 10th gen was in sport mode, the steering wheel got heavy and it felt German.
Okay. You're
And I was like,
somebody poached an engineer.
Yeah, and so that light bulb kind of instantly went off in my head, and I was like, okay, this car is cheap to mod, cheap to maintain. You're going to rack up easily 35,000 miles in the first year driving this.
Holy shit.
And which I did.
Wow.
So I almost blew through the warranty within the first. And I
remember that.
You
and
need the AC.
I needed the AC compressor replaced because
Oh
there
my
was this
God.
whine, and I had to argue with there's a whole big story on that one because I had to argue with dealerships.
I remember this, yeah.
And convince them that the sound was not just something.
It's not in my head. It's not in my head. This is real.
Yeah, and I never ended up publishing it, but I had dash cam footage recording them, like with them in the shop on their own, like hearing it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's there," and so I used it in the event if they disagree.
They wanted to give you shit. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyways, what ended up the whole thing with Acuity literally came down to I had driven the car like within the first month or two, I already racked down like 6,000 miles on the car.
That's like
And-
relatable. I've had my car for less than a month. I've got 1,800 miles on it.
Yeah, it racks up really quick.
It's nuts.
And what I realized really quickly was that, oh, wow, this shifter does not feel like day one anymore. And this is after a month or two of driving. And when you rack up that many miles, the amount of time that has passed, you get over that honeymoon phase of owning the car really quickly, and you start to understand the little quirks.
And you're like, oh, this is falling apart.
Yeah, so aside from the Apple CarPlay issues from way back, which are still problematic now in some instances, but the biggest thing I noticed was, wow, the shifter is starting to feel very sloppy. Like, I took a look at research, took a look at what the factory shifter looked like, and I was like, oh, it's just moving plastic pieces. No wonder it's starting to develop slop. Started looking up parts. I came across two companies, Hybrid Racing and Acuity. And for me, I had a history with Eli's channel working with a small business called Condor Speed Shop.
I remember that.
And
Oh,
they
yeah,
sponsored
yeah, yeah.
bushings and stuff like that. They treated me really well. And I was like, you know what? I'm a young channel. I don't want to work with a big company. And I am glad that I did because Hybrid Racing is the biggest direct competitor to Acuity now. But anyways, I chose to try to pitch asking for sponsorships on certain... Oh, sorry.
He's touching himself.
He's
It's okay.
touching himself on. You guys can't see this.
Tapping.
And I'm just trying to really gently ask Powen to stop touching himself while
It's getting
we're
us all
recording
excited.
this.
So we really...
I mean, we're not mad. We just think that it's inappropriate for the listeners. But no, I have this table, and anytime you touch the table, it's going to make a sound. So I always have to remind all of my friends who apparently every one of my fucking friends has ADHD and dyslexia. So you're all a mess. You're all a total mess.
We're all fucked.
You all can't stop touching things, and I have to ask you to stop touching things. And that's
And
my
also-
whole life. I'm
and-
realizing this right now that I think I ask my friends to stop touching
That's why I
things
sit on my hands
all
when I do
the
this.
time. I'm like, okay, everybody, come to the podcast. Sit on your hands.
Oh, my God. And
Between you and David, I'm like, don't touch things. Stop touching things.
We do like pressing buttons.
You touch things. Every time you sit on the couch at our apartment, you would just unconsciously like close your eyes and just grab something of mine that was somewhat near you.
Just go like
And
that.
then you would just take it apart and put it together and take it. I'm like, what are you doing?
That's what I
Leave
like to
my
do.
we're going
tripod
to grow to
alone.
like a 5-panel podcast, and he's going to be like folding origami in the
It's
corner. and-
literally. I mean, maybe if you had origami, we could fucking sell some merch.
I don't think I could do that.
We could do
That's too
Eddie's
complicated.
origami. We could sell respect the swans or something. I don't know.
I mean, after working in customer service with both my parents and Acuity, like I can tell you, I do not want to do sales on my own.
Oh, talking to people other than this amount of people right here. This is as far as it goes for me.
Yeah.
So you've looked into this. Now you're like, okay, I see Condor, I see Hybrid Racing, and then Acuity pops up.
Yeah, I gravitated towards Acuity because one, smaller company, and it seemed like they just started. And at the time, I had a really big amount of respect for people that started businesses because I know that it's difficult. And at the same time, all I saw was hybrid racing.
Right. And so as a YouTuber, you're probably thinking like, ooh, that's saturated. I could maybe
Yes,
get
sir.
in on this new thing and be the guy who's installing these Acuity shifters.
Exactly. So so
You hear that, aspiring YouTubers? Go hunt for the new stuff.
yes, and also don't just ask don't literally just DM and be like sponsorship.
I need free shit. Actually, though, at the time, you probably could have gotten away with that.
Yeah, but nowadays it's just like
back then.
it's just like a bot. It feels
Russ
like a
would be
bot.
like, "Who you want my shit? Absolutely."
Here's a
Well, here's
paper
the
bag.
Do you have a camera?
Well, here's the thing. I basically went, hey, I have this channel. I just picked up a 2017 Honda Civic Si. I am from a BMW crowd, and I think at the time I had 8,000, 9,000 subs on
Sure.
the channel, and so I was like, hey, I'm really interested in. I think the time it was the centering spring, base bushings, and the cable bushings. And I was like, hey, and it was probably like $150, $200 worth of parts. Not
Sure.
even.
Yeah, but that's a big deal when you're like a small channel
Yeah.
and someone's like trusting. I mean, the thing is, anyone giving you anything feels like a huge thing at the time.
I asked, like, hey, I got a YouTube channel. It's got about 8,000, 9,000 subs. Formerly BMW guy. Just got the 10th gen Civic, and I see that you have parts compatible with it. Could we work something out? Could we do sponsorships? Like, I would love to work with your parts. You guys seem like you put a lot of work into the designs and stuff like that. And I don't remember exactly what I say. I could pull up the email, but it's just like,
But you're probably just asking for parts and saying, I'm going to make a video on it. You're not asking for like, $2,000 on top of it.
no.
Right?
And nowadays, I think it's obnoxious when influencers ask for that, because it's just kind of like, especially when a small business, it's just kind of like, oh, so this small business can't pay you the $2,000, so now you go with the $2,000 from a bigger company.
I hear
Has
ya.
nothing to lose.
I mean, to me,
You know?
it's like if I'm reaching out to a company, then typically I'm probably not expecting anything in return other
Yeah.
than hopefully like the product placement and being
Yeah.
like, oh, cool, like thanks for the thing. And then like, by the way, don't give me a whole bunch of guidelines if I'm just saying like, yeah, give me the parts and we'll rock and roll.
Yeah.
But if someone's reaching out to me and saying, hey, we'd love to work with you, now I see dollar signs. Because I'm
Yes.
just like, sure, I wasn't even planning on doing this. Don't really care if it happens. What are you thinking?
Yes, and we
You
can
know what I
talk
mean?
about sponsorships in a little bit, but
Behind
well,
the door of YouTube sponsors.
yeah, and yeah, I've been debating on making my own host of videos about that topic as well, because like a lot of people are like, oh, how'd you do this? How'd you get into this? How'd you get sponsored? And
I like to leave it
and-
alone though.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I'm in a tough spot nowadays, because I feel like I took advantage of a lot of those premium removals. Like I would just pay at cost for a lot of things. That, like for example, there's this shop, Auto Engineering in Lexington.
Yep.
Amazing group of guys, very friendly. They were the guys that actually gave me a shot. Like my parents were like, you need a job that isn't in restaurant industry.
Right.
And I was like 15 at the time, 15, 16. And they were like, go down the street and ask for a job at that auto shop. And they just gave me a job.
That's great.
They were like, we need someone to clean up.
Thanks, Rick.
Yeah, right. Well, it was
Who was it
Ernie
at the time? Okay.
and that guy was a whole character. But anyways, Rick is an amazing turn of ownership, and he's brought it to whole new levels.
So anyway, Acuity, Russ, he gives.
Yeah, sorry.
You reach out. You're like, hey, I'm doing this thing, and he's like, here's the stuff.
Well, no,
Film it? No, Russ, you
He
son of a
said no.
bitch. You said no. Ooh.
he basically let me down really easy. And the thing about Russ.
He was nice about it.
Yeah, so here's the thing about Russ that I always appreciate is he always delivers his perspective, and he always gives you a sound reasoning. So he never feels like he's just blowing you off.
I mean, it's nice
know?
of him to even respond to you.
Yeah, he was just kind of like,
I
hey.
ignore people every day.
And I think here's the reason why Russ and I get along well, and also at times our conversations are unproductive, is because when we started emailing each other, we would like email paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs all the time, and just like talk, shoot the shit, just like
Sure.
talk banter about cars, platforms, YouTube. Because at the end of the day, he denied me because he was already working with another YouTuber, quote unquote, that was already making install guides for their parts.
Oh, so
right?
he's like, I don't really need you.
No, he doesn't need somebody to make install guides. He would rather have someone to do reviews, but I wasn't a trustworthy
No, you weren't the
person
reviewer.
at the time.
You-
Yeah,
you-
I had no exposure in the Honda game aside from I got a Honda Civic Si.
Right, and
of
you've
that-
probably
that video,
driven
you
like
know?
9 cars in your life.
Yeah, exactly. Not yeah, I'm maybe a little more than 9, but I mean, like you're right. Like I don't have a lot of experience, and I look back at it and I was like, yeah, I was like 21.
Right.
Or not 21, but I was young. I was
You
in
were
my
young, yeah.
early 20s. But anyways, I ended up buying the parts because I was like, you know what?
I'm doing it anyway.
I'm doing it anyways. Yeah, I was just hoping to get like a discount, and it's $100 worth
Sure.
of stuff.
Right.
Oh, I also got the pedal spacer. That's why it was almost $200 that I remember.
I love that you remember this detail.
Yeah, because it was very interesting.
You're
Because
like in the part number.
I remember what
And it
hurts
was
my
purple,
wallet.
so it was a dash 02 skew.
Oh yeah, nowadays it's just like I bought a 1919, an 1891, 1924, 1918. But anyways,
So you get it, you install it.
yeah, I
and-
make the videos and I do the review, and then I get an email back from him, and he was like, "Hey, the quality of videos is actually on par, if not better, than what this guy made for us."
You hear that guy? Hear
I
that
don't wanna
guy?
call
No,
out,
I'm
'cause
kidding.
he
I'm
did-
joking. I'm joking.
Because
I'm just teasing.
his arrangement was same thing. He would get free parts,
Yeah.
make an install video,
Sure.
and then he gets a plug. You
Yep.
know?
Done.
And I think that channel is now retired because basically I'm at the point where I've recreated all those videos.
Right.
And
You shut him down.
Sorry.
The
But I
way
mean, I
she
did.
goes.
Way
I
she
did.
goes, bud.
I did spend months on those, or if not, almost a year on all those install guides.
Oh, I remember.
Because yeah, you
I
remember
had to
it's like,
reshoot like 3 times.
Oh yeah. And but anyways, after I made the videos I sent to him, he was pretty impressed. He started being like, "Hey, coincidentally, I have just finished a prototype for what's now known as the short throw adapter for the 10th Gen Civic," and he was like, "Could you do a video, kind of like doing an install guide and all this stuff?" And in the back of my mind, I was just like, "This is my audition tape.
Yeah.
Like, this is how I'm going to get it in. And this is the first experience that I have actually working with a company." So I gave it my best shot. And I ended up working with the product. I actually ended up offering feedback because I had trouble aligning. Inside the short throw adapter, there's these teeth that align a specific way. So when you tighten down the screws, it bites into the lower selector rod of the shifter.
Right.
And a lot of people don't push the rod up high enough before they secure it, and then they would complain how it loosens and stuff like that. So I had offered I told him, like, there needs to be a way that locks in the alignment of all these components better.
Pokey yoke.
And yeah, whatever.
All the lean manufacturing engineers
Yeah.
are like, it needs to click into place.
Yeah, pretty much. And so I was responsible in, I guess, influencing a design iteration.
Sure.
And I never ended up making that video public for another 6 months because of the redesign, re-implementation, complete rework of, and until this day, we've actually gone through, I think, 2 or 3 iterations of that part because of customer feedback. But anyways, I finished the video. He really liked it. And ever since, I slowly just accumulated more and more responsibility. And it got to the point where I didn't have I was basically sleep deprived all the time. And you could ask my girlfriend this. She was just like, you like fall asleep. Like as soon as your head hits the pillow, you're like asleep.
Well, you never say no to anything.
And what ended up happening was just like I would wake up early, like 4 or 5 in the morning, go to work, get back home at 4, work on Acuity stuff, work on my stuff, go to bed at like 1 or 2 a.m.
Yeah, that's not great.
And I did that for like 6 months.
I see. I don't function like that. I can't
I
function
don't know
on low
how I
sleep.
did.
I don't know how you. Well, it was probably just because you were 23 years old. So
Probably,
I mean,
yeah. Like it was weird, but
It's a different time, man.
Do you get
Yeah.
angry? I have a question, personal question. Do you like? Let's say you and your girlfriend, you're watching a movie and you fall asleep. Does she like wake you up and be like, "Hey," and you're like, "I'm awake"? Do you do this bullshit?
well, it's funny
Do you play
because
this game and pretend you're awake when you're not awake?
I think early on I just tried to be respectful about it because she knew I was sleep deprived, but she didn't know to what degree. Because early on in a relationship, I remember we would go on dates and stuff like that. We would wind down for the night, and then she would go take a shower. And as soon as she'd come back, I would like kind of startle myself and be like, "Hey, what's going on?" And she was like, "I've been gone for 20 minutes, and you've been asleep for 20 minutes. Like, you
She's
can go to
like,
sleep."
she's like, "Hey, baby, I'm out of the shower,"
Yeah.
and you're like, "Yeah, I'm asleep." And she's like, "Man, our nights end early."
I give her so much respect because I feel like any other girl would have saw that and been like, "This guy does not care.
He is bored with me.
He's bored." Yeah. So I'm glad that she gave me a chance and tolerated that because after I left that construction company, full 180.
Yeah.
Like-
now you're like, oh, I have time to do what I want. I can plan
Yeah.
my stuff. So at this point now, you've gone from kind of like this hired killer for Acuity to do occasional contract work to like
Now full-time.
Now you're full time. So you put in
Yes.
your notice at the construction place.
Mm-hmm.
I
Now,
remember how nervous you were doing that because
Yeah.
you and I had conversations. You're like, you were kind of nervous at the time about.
I didn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
I had never been like, I'm putting in my 2 weeks. Honestly, when I think about how it went down, I kind of just blurted it out because my boss was about to tell me about a big project.
and you're like, I'm not
And
doing
I was
that.
like,
Don't count on me.
yeah, he was like, "Hey man, like I literally got a call last night and my dream job's knocking on my door and I got to take it." And then the guy was like, "How long are we talking?" And he was like, honestly, I can stick around for 2 weeks. And he'd be like, that'd be great. Because they really, at the time,
Wow.
I felt terrible because the company was so understaffed. Like, a reason why I had left was because I never felt like I got really good formal training. I was thrown into the fire with a lot of projects.
That's how
And that's
these
how it is.
places work.
Yeah,
I mean,
no matter where you work in
there is no
engineering, it's-
training. You train
Yeah.
under fire. That is what the industry is.
Yes, and if I could give advice to anyone that's in mechanical engineering or pursuing the degrees and stuff like that right now, don't believe what your professors are saying in terms of this is the standard way. This is how
Everyone
equations-
does,
and you
no.
have or you
The
have
way
to
you're-
memorize this equation. No,
Yeah, the way your
everything-
dad taught you how to fix cars is how the industry works.
Yeah,
it's
they-
getting yelled at and it's trying shit and it's definitely not looking at the fucking manual.
I
Yeah.
really thought for a second there you were going to be like, yeah, for all the engineers, don't do it.
No, it's
It's
give
not
up.
that I don't say don't do it.
I
It's
just-
just that it's not what you're going to expect
you know
out
the,
of college.
the problem with engineering is that it's very pragmatic as an education. You learn step by step. This is how you do the job. Except the job isn't step by step, and it's almost it's almost always new. And that means that like all your rules go out the window. Philosophy stays true because you still need
Ethics.
to follow ethics and principle and all this stuff. But like the reality is like you are not solving problems pragmatically a lot of the time. You are doing some pretty blunt force trial and error on stuff.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
especially when it's a new product.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I think one of the most important takeaways I got from my whole engineering program wasn't necessarily all the concepts and all the, complexities of how things work. It was more of like it taught me how to learn stuff fast.
It taught me how to be stressed out and still get the job done.
Yeah, and just work through the stress and that I think in the end of it really kind of morphed my perspective on working on cars a little bit more because I went in to every project first looking like, okay, how does this work? What is this part supposed to be doing? Now, how am I involved in terms of making that happen?
Right.
And you kind of put the pieces together and logically some things work. And then fortunately, a lot of the things that I did take away from college, it made sense. Like, okay, it doesn't make sense that this is running like this because of X, Y, Z, or doesn't make sense that this part has to go in like this because of old,
Sure.
like stupid little nuances that you pick up. But at the end of the day, I think it was nerve-wracking to leave that job because I genuinely felt bad leaving because it wasn't like it was an easy switch. I was taking a huge risk. And frankly, the whole reason why I jumped ship wasn't necessarily because Russ was like, I can pay you full time. He was like, I have the ability to pay you full time. And I kind of got too excited and took that as jump ship. And then Russ was just like, oh, crap, you're taking this seriously, huh? And so now he's like, crap, do I even have enough work for this guy? And
Right,
so
because he's
on
paying you
Russell's
like
end,
you're essentially still contract, but
Yeah.
he's basically saying like we could do enough where you're
His-
doing 40 hours a week for me or 50 hours a week.
his exact words, I think he was like, I can match your hourly pay if you wanted to work more hours or pretty much start out however you want. I can
Right.
match it. And I was
Sure.
like, that's good enough for me.
But like, see, at the end of the day, like the moral of this story to me is that you were doing something that you had like gone to school for, had trained for, or part of. It was burning you out, and your passion was still the thing that you were aiming for because you were still going into
Yes.
your garage every night and working on the cars. And then you went and dug deep. So this is the same thing with Eddie. Like you are working a day job. You're doing your thing every day. You're grinding it out.
Yep.
And then what are you doing on the weekends at night?
Doing car shit.
It's all this fucking race car shit.
Yeah.
And it's hunting for how am I going to get these tires? Who's going to fix this car? How am I going to be a priority over at Eurotech Natick with Farley so he can fix my fucking car on Thursday so I can leave on Friday?
It kind of reminds me of the whole Japanese street racing underground scene where it's like there's
Midnight
these business,
Club.
Midnight Club. There's these businessmen during the day, and nobody knows who's in the club, and then at night there's just these cars just going.
Exactly.
The only reason people know that I even do any sort of car things is there's a sticker of my car on my cube.
That's
And that's it.
yeah.
Most people think I'm just this boring loser.
It's really difficult to separate that work life and something that you're doing essentially full time on the side.
Yep.
Like if you're putting that much energy into it, it's gonna come up.
And I'll tell you, it's easy to get into it, but it's hard to maintain the drive and the motivation and that flame, that kind of keeps burning. And I think a big reason why, like, fast forward 5 years now, I'm frankly burnt out because not only am I doing my own channel, I actually get paid to do the same thing for an entire company.
Yeah.
And so the responsibilities are increased. So there's a lot of it sucks because I hate to say it, but it's like the financial aspect of it becomes more important when it becomes something that needs to pay your bills. And I'm
Of
sure you
course.
felt the same way when you jumped ship from and went full time YouTube.
Yeah.
It's a big commitment. It's a big risk, and there's a lot. Like, I've a big thing that I have to constantly remind myself whenever I make content and whenever I put my customer service hat is that like people recognize me as one of the faces of Acuity now, to the point where it's just like, this is a big deal.
Right.
And
You are an
so-
ambassador of it.
Yeah, and so when you have that in mind when I create content and stuff like that, it just adds another level of responsibility that I never anticipated I'd ever
Yeah,
have.
but you're not an asshole.
I'm glad that you
Like,
say that.
Yeah, you're not walking around, saying just really mean stuff.
You're a nice dude.
You're a good dude.
just wanna help people.
Before
That's literally
Acuity.
it.
Yeah,
And I
like
think
I would
that's-
never, like if it was Eddie, I'd be like, oh Jesus,
Yeah, exactly.
you shouldn't be out in public.
And I want to say,
Where's his helmet?
I give you a microphone once in a while, and I'm horrified. I can't believe what comes out of your fucking mouth. The amount of editing I have to do on this bitch.
You're worse. Don't
I know.
even try that.
I'm really bad.
You have a potty mouth. You're worse than me.
If you, I have like what I think are funny road rage incidents,
Dirty.
like on camera occasionally. Like I don't act on it. Like it's me just like yelling at somebody, and I think like, oh, maybe that'll be a blooper, and then like I look at it and I'm like, oh, that does not sound very nice.
Tom,
I can't put
Tom,
that as
how
a
many
blooper.
videos have you and I done together where we think, oh, this is going to be great, this is going to be gold,
It's
and then we
super
watch
funny.
it and we're both like, this is disgusting.
Yeah, we do not
We
look.
can't-
We,
we
don't
can't.
look funny or nice or cute or any of it.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, this is only funny to us. And
It's
I
only
think
funny to us.
the difference
exactly.
is we are at least adept enough to look at that and say, yeah, this doesn't make it to air.
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
Like that's
Yeah.
not cute. That's not funny.
No,
Yeah.
it's just sick.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
I feel that.
Well, and the thing was too, like when I started figuring out how to do what I'm doing in the same vein where you're like, ooh, I want to make sure that this is a good look and it's like responsible and it represents probably. What I do is and it sounds really lame, but I have a 12-year-old cousin who watches my channel. And so for the last like 2-3 years, everything I make, I'm like, can he watch this?
He's the
And
baseline.
And that's an important perspective, because it's funny you say that, because I was talking to my boss about TikTok, and I was telling him, I'm like, we need to invest into TikTok because there are these 12 to 16-year-old kids that are seeing our stuff and they're looking for something to look up to.
Right.
And so if we can get into their minds that Acuity is a brand in the JDM community that they need to know of, they're going to get hooked.
Absolutely.
You
And they're
know?
going to, and that's funny because you guys actually have like the branding, the graphic art that is fun for a young kid.
Yeah.
Oh,
like,
totally.
like I think your shit's really fun, but sometimes I wear it and I'm like, do I have a lean cup on my back right now? And then,
Yep.
and then I'm like, and then when someone's like, what's that purple drink? I'm like, it's purple drink.
I think one thing that Russ has done extremely well for Acuity is being able to work with creatives that understand where the industry is going, not only just as an industry, but choosing the right people that can actually have a good connection with a broad range of ages.
Sure.
Because that in my mind, it's kind of like you're no longer like an old like a Dynan head, that was from
Right.
the 90s, and
Yep.
everyone is very like closely connected to that from a BMW perspective. But like we want to kind of do that in the same level as like Spoon. for
Right.
Hondas,
You want to be that
Yeah.
Mugen spoon
Yeah,
kind
Yeah.
of deal. Yeah.
It's getting there for
And-
sure.
And it makes me very happy that a lot of people are seeing us in that light.
So
because-
speaking of seeing you in a certain light, especially like Spoon, it's almost as if you'd be sponsoring some race teams.
yeah.
So, all right. So
Yeah.
this is why this is interesting. This podcast sounds like a fucking Acuity commercial,
It is.
except I mean it is. It's an unpaid
free
ad.
publicity,
But the
Russ.
thing is, like Eddie, you drive a Honda Civic Type R.
Mm-hmm.
With Acuity blasted across the side, in the front and the back, everything, and
Bukkake.
it's only because yes, this is why you're not allowed to be the PR.
I know.
The your publicist is crying
Well,
in
you
the
said
bathroom
blasted.
right now.
So
Russ is like, Jesus Christ. So this is only because you knew Powen and he was using your car as a test bed for like.
it's funny. The whole thing was Powen was like, hey, Russ was asking if you knew anybody with a Type R that tracks it, and you're like, I know just the guy, and then that's what happened.
Right, and then so they come to you. They're like, "Hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we do this?" And then how does the Grid Life thing happen with them? What was that like? How did that get
So-
sold to? So I've heard it from your
It's
perspective.
all
I
this
think.
guy, seriously.
How does
Yeah.
that get sold to the point where you're like, "Hey, let's just get him on this track?
So Russ we had worked with a couple professional drivers before, right? And the challenge was always maximizing the fruitfulness of the relationship.
Sure.
And a lot of the times, the previous people we worked with, huge respect for them, by the way. I mean, I'm just
You
not
don't
gonna,
have to sugarcoat
I'm not gonna,
shit.
yeah, I'm not going to go into specifics, but I mean, basically, all great drivers to work with.
Sure.
But they also had their own aspirations to go into pro.
Right.
So like SCCA,
Yeah.
like you name it. And a lot of those guys have moved on to those
It's just a little
platforms.
beyond the scope of where you guys were at the time.
Yes, and we really wanted to invest into guys that were really in tune with the grassroots motorsport community.
Yeah.
And kind of are rooted there. And that's kind of where our products shine, because a lot of people use those products in that level of racing.
Well, and it adds credibility that you've got your streetable track car.
Yes.
That it's not just like oh, that kid down the street with all the stickers on his car has an Acuity shifter. It's like, okay, cool. So he has a short shifter. Like, what's the big deal? But
Yeah.
now you've got like racing teams out there with like Acuity equipment in the cars.
And what's crazy is that a lot of these guys are like, oh my God, I can't believe this shifter would feel just as good on the street as on the track. And I'm just like, yeah, there's a lot of people that think short shifters are only for race cars. And I'm like, this is a shifter that can just change and make more exciting the driving experience for
Right.
a person that just happens to have one as their standard equipment in their car.
So it was just a matter of circumstance that you guys were pretty comfortable with the Grid Life setup.
Yes, like
And
we wanted to work in that specific event pool because we knew dependable racing events were accessible to it, and
Right.
it's not to the point where they're asking $100,000 just to have your banner on the track. You know, it was expensive,
Sure,
like as any,
but it's doable.
Yeah,
And then at the same time, you've got this friend, Eddie,
Yes, sir.
who happens to be like, I'd love to be racing in Grid Life.
yes, and
Yes.
I pitched Eddie to Russ specifically because he was skilled, dependable, consistent, which was very important.
Which you'd never know at meeting him.
Things I'm not bad.
Do you hear that? I want to talk directly to Eddie's mother. Rebecca, did you hear what Powen just said?
Yeah,
I just
know.
want
She
you to
would
hear
be-
that.
She wouldn't believe
That
me.
is like, it's so, no, but you really are though. It's just funny because you're such a fucking class clown, like shitbag
Well, to you.
to people, but like when you need to get the job done, you're always there.
I can do it if
It's
it's,
just-
like if there's money. Just kidding.
That's so fucking funny.
But like with you, I'm always late. Slow.
No, you're never late with me. You're usually on time. You're usually pretty
I'm
reasonable.
good on time, but
No,
like everything else.
I think you just give off this air of like, yeah, I'll get there when I get there. But like you always get the job done.
Well, thank you.
Which is just funny
I
because I
think-
think you get a lot of shit, especially from your family. Your family gives
Oh,
you so
my
much shit.
well, okay. It's hard to be successful in a family that is built upon success.
Yeah, academics,
Yeah,
and
academics.
like it's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people.
all of
in
them
your-
have done amazing things with their lives, and then there's me,
And
which
then
I've
there's-
also done amazing things with my life.
They're cute. They treat you like a sweet dog. Like they like give you that kiss. Like, oh, it's so good to see my Eddie. And they, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and,
no, they know. I
They
mean,
know. But the thing is, you're the best fucking dog.
thank you.
You're the sweetest dog. You're like
I
the
am.
best little
Everybody
scruffer
likes
pup.
me because they know it's like, oh, he put lights under his car. Actually,
Yeah.
Powen put those
Well,
lights on
oh,
his
you
car.
did that. Yeah, good job.
We put it on
We
together.
like hacked it together in like 2 hours.
Yeah, because we had to go to the track, so we were like, we got to do this.
We
Okay,
gotta have
so you
underglow.
pitch Eddie to Russ, and you tell him all these nice things, and then he meets Eddie.
It was a match made in heaven.
Because it's funny because you've known Eddie.
I've spoken to Russ many times up until then,
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
but I had never actually met him.
Mm-hmm.
And so once I met him, it was
Well, you played
Russ
COD
is awesome.
together.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we talked
Oh
a
my
lot.
God! This is the new fucking golf, man. Like, I don't golf, so like I knew I was never gonna make it.
Powen tried as well.
It's funny you say that because I would be the golfer that kind of sucks ass, but I just want to go just because I can have cocktails and talk to the boys.
Yeah, you're gonna
You
be
know?
like, oh,
So-
if I want to be upper management, I need to be golfing with the
I just-
director,
I
and I
just-
need to make like I need to laugh at his racist jokes and be like, okay, haha,
I
let's
think
go. And
the only thing that I had remote decency at was Plunder. And
Oh,
I was
you were
still
fantastic at
I was
that.
fine.
What
But,
does
like,
that mean?
It's
a type of game where you just collect a lot of money.
oh, all right,
yeah, and so I didn't have to shoot anyone because I could not aim for the life of me.
Powen is good at following orders.
Yes.
yeah, that's
So,
factual.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Um,
Okay, so that's good, and that makes me laugh that like I probably have missed out on so many opportunities because I don't play Call of Duty.
I mean, I don't
think you
even.
missed
We don't.
out.
You don't
It's-
miss
it's
out.
just-
It's just that's That's what we've had to do during the pandemic because we can't hang out with each other.
And you
That's
know, and
true.
I feel like what the whole pandemic has taught us is just kind of like time is precious. And I looked at almost like the same way as if I was just working on my car, my friend wanted to stop by. What would my friend end up doing? He's not going to touch the car. He's just going to want to
Sure.
hang out and talk.
Yeah.
You know, and that's perfectly fine with me too.
Well, and
It's
that's the
just a
thing
different
is,
version of it.
I will say, like, just from a nostalgia standpoint, like, I'm very proud of where you guys are both at right now because I know what you guys started doing. And like, I met you probably in your garage working on
I think Gertrude. Yeah.
Gertrude up on jack stands and whatever. And like, I knew you're somebody that I knew from YouTube before I knew you in real life, which is like weird because now that's normal to me. Now that is like not an abnormal thing. Like there's plenty of people that are like, oh yeah, that's the guy. And I meet them and it's fine. You were like the first actual like YouTuber I met. You and Eli, I think, were the first people that I was like, I know them from videos. Like, and that's crazy. And it was weird. And I was kind of like, oh, I hope I could be, I hope they like want to hang out with me. I mean, you're younger than me anyway. So it wasn't something that I was like hunting for a friend. It was more that I was just like, oh, I also make videos and I'm not going to like necessarily tell them that, but I just wanted the weird thing about YouTube is there's so many YouTubers out there.
YouTubers,
YouTubers,
quote,
let's say.
yeah.
But like you are alone. And it's like those are the only form of colleague you might possibly have.
Yes.
And yet, like everyone else who goes to work, they have colleagues that they see every day. They're like, oh, you do this, you do that, you do this, you do that. And those are my colleagues. I understand that. Whereas like as a YouTuber, you work in a pool of people who are being recommended right next to you constantly. And you might never know them. You might never meet them. You might never really have like any even good interaction with these people. And so for me, it was like, whoa, I could maybe learn what like YouTubers do. Because everything is ground up. Everyone, like nobody knows what they're doing.
And it's interesting because I've kind of pursued similar relationships with other YouTubers in a similar way. It's just like, not only do I consider this person a friend, I want to understand how they're keeping that spark alive, what their hustle is like.
It's hard.
It's a hustle.
I mean, like, just fast forward through the years that I've kind of gone through it, I'm at the point where it's just like, you know, what I value the most in my life nowadays is being able to have my own free time. And as you get older, that want to satisfy some sort of craving, whether it is appeasing to an audience, appeasing your friends, or showing off, or trying to pursue fame, clout, whatever you name it, it doesn't really weigh as much as you get older. Because as you're young, you always feel like you have something to prove. And the whole reason why I did the turbo build with Gertrude was because so many people said I couldn't do it at 19.
And do you remember that car did like over 1 million views on Winding Road Magazine?
Yeah, we thought it was just going to be like, this is going to be hilarious. People are just going to shit on us.
Yeah.
Because the car was not...
It was rough.
It was rough. And it
Hitting
still
the
is.
windows, dude.
It's still,
I remember
the windows still don't work.
It had like the stick.
It
It had
still
that
got
piece
the
of
stick.
wood.
Yeah.
Still has the stick.
And like that, so there's a stick that literally holds up the window. Like that is the deal because the regulator is toast.
Yeah, on that car, the door frame itself cannot reliably align the regulator and the motor anymore because I've screwed around with it so many times where like I just given up. I'd have to get a whole door to make it work.
Exactly. So it just made me laugh because I remember that was one of those videos that I was like, I was fortunate to learn how to be a YouTuber on a big channel. Like I had actually like a really lucky situation where I got to learn what it looked like to post a video to a channel that got views.
Yes.
Right? Like
Yeah.
that's a weird...
crazy.
I thought it was amazing that you got the opportunity to work with
That's
Winding
like
Road.
not normal.
Yeah.
Like that's not like most YouTubers do not have the opportunity to see like what a schedule looks like. Even to just be able to look at analytics of a successful channel, that's gold to somebody who doesn't know what they're doing.
I get that from Acuity because Acuity's platform on Instagram was the biggest account I had worked with, and now it's of course like 30,000 followers now. But our TikTok, that was the platform where I dealt with million hit views for the first time, and I'm like, wow, this is what it's like when you actually get a million hit video.
You learn what consistency does for a channel. You learn what all these things do.
Yes.
And I mean, it was wild. But like, that's the thing is, I always just thought that was funny because that was one of those cars where like, you know, to me, I was like, well, I'm going to go get my like, you know, little contract payment, my check for this video because I was just trying to rack up as much as I could on Winding Road so I could have an extra paycheck at the end of the month.
And I was just like, here, review my car.
Do the
It's
thing.
going to be funny. Like,
Yeah.
you
But
know?
isn't it crazy though? That whole I'm just gonna get a paycheck turned into you're learning so much.
It was crazy.
And then that turned into wait a minute, I can fucking do this on my own.
Well, it was nuts because I was making like, enough to like maybe pay my credit card bill, let's say, from Winding Road. And then it was like, wait a minute, what you want to really do is build up a channel so you make like 10x each video on your own. And then like you have to just kind of jump off into the deep end and be like, okay, so I could either put this energy into like, let's say, reviewing your car, and I could sell it for an amount that I know I'm going to get that check, or I can put it on my channel and it might earn me like $12.
Yeah.
And that was the risk. That's how it worked. And so, eventually you're like, well, here's the thing. You have to basically like earn $12 100 times consistently. And then that turns into $50, and that turns into $300, and that turns into more money. And then you're like, okay, cool. Now we're like, I can live off of this.
It's a total, just like any job really, but especially in YouTube and from just watching you both and other people, you have to put in way more time in the beginning to get that initial jump start for sure.
Yes.
Well, and that's the thing. I'd watch you, like you are really meticulous with your videos. They are good. Your videos fucking hit. Like,
Oh yeah.
I treat all of my at the time, because nowadays I'm trying to wind back because my OCD with being meticulous is the reason why it takes so long for me to make one video.
my recommendation 1,000,000% is don't do that.
Yeah.
Is literally like get it out there.
I
Like
would
don't make
say-
it shitty, but like if you can't like reliably make 2 a week, like
It's not worth your
figure it
time.
out. Figure it out. Like
I would put
make
anywhere
it
between 25 to 40 hours for one video.
no.
And I was just like, I'm not getting paid for this.
Not so the thing
Like-
is like I think a lot of people they think like, oh, if I make like ultra high quality shit, and yours is ultra high quality shit, and you might make one video a week and it still takes you that much time, you burn out after 3 months because
Yeah.
you're like, oh my God, I've made 12
Well, in my case, I
videos.
burned out after almost 2 years.
Right,
you
but
know?
like you make like 12 videos in a row, week to week to week to week, and it takes you so long. And every time it's like not even a formula because you're doing different shit, and maybe you didn't figure out your formula. It's like that's what changed my game, was being like, wait, how do I formulaically do this 3 times a week? And that like it made me want to cry when I first realized how much I had to do.
Yep.
But then you dial it in and you're like, oh, I can do this fucking blindfolded. Like, and that's the thing. Like, I always tell people, like, find a way to do this. Like, basically, just
Effortlessly.
you treat it like a manufacturing process.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that doesn't sound very sexy, but the reality is, you need to be able to churn shit out, and it has to be high
Yeah,
quality.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it has to be second nature.
Right.
It's got to be a
You
rhythm.
can't- Yeah, and this is why I go back to like just having attention deficit like stuff is just because like I can't reliably depend on myself to follow a process, because every time I edit a video there's something new I want to try, there's a different angle I want to try, different filter, different editing style.
Fuck
different-
that.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
So it's
don't
like,
waste your time on
I'm
that
at the
shit.
point where if I really want to deliver the same quality of stuff that I've done in the past, I need someone else editing it and just giving them the content, telling them how I want it to look like,
Right.
and just pay them to do that,
Well,
because I'm not paying myself enough. to do
Sometimes
that
you're
effort.
getting you're I know you are someone who can get lost in the details.
Yes.
Because you go deep. But the problem is, go deep on the content, don't go deep on the equipment. And you do this thing where you're like, oh, I've got this camera, we're gonna try this, we're gonna do this, and then you've got like now you've got 3 cameras surrounding this thing. It's like, nope.
Yeah.
Shut it down.
One camera.
Get one, get a good light, just show the thing. And if you have to show it from a back angle, great, do that. But like, oh my God, we got to talk about what you're doing, because
Yeah.
you're going to kill yourself. Like, this is exhausting.
Yes, and I think I credit my boss Russ a big part in kind of narrowing down what I am good at and what I'm productive at, because he was the first person that was just like, okay, if you're going to be working with us full time, I will give you a small amount of money so you can purchase equipment, and I'm still using that equipment to this day.
Absolutely.
You know,
I mean,
and-
that's the thing. You buy high quality shit, it'll last.
Well,
Like,
here's the thing: it's not like a red camera or anything
No.
like that. I ended up asking, and I still use it to this day, is an A6500,
that's all you need.
and that's all you really need. And
I found that if I had more complex stuff, I shot less, because I'm
I
like, no,
remember
I'm going
the
to drag
the
this shit
gimbal
out.
and all that
Oh my
stuff.
God.
Do you remember that? That was a great
That
idea
stupid
and concept.
fucking Canon on the gimbal.
But
Like,
then-
what a nightmare.
But then walking around with this thing, lugging it around, oh my God.
Just terrible.
workout.
No, you
Look,
can't.
and you're
That's not
exhausted.
reliable,
Look,
and it's like, how am I supposed to vlog with this?
And at
I
the
look
end
like
of-
an idiot.
And it also it also limits your creativity in a certain way because you're like, I can only hold it like this. I can only do it like this.
Well, and what am I doing? I'm always like getting out of a car, quickly filming the thing, and then getting back in the car. So like now I got a gimbal flapping around
Remember,
in the trunk
it
of
never
a.
aligned. It was never level. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
that's kind of why like I was kind of giving a projection of how I anticipated the company was going to grow.
Yes.
And I was hoping that it was going to be eventually, I'm going to have a team of guys to work with. So that one guy is the gimbal guy. One guy is the editor for short format. One guy is the long format guy. Like that's how I hope, things are going to move forward. But right now, the challenge for me is like, where is my most productive use of my time concentrated in with this company? And Russ has done a big part in helping me figure that out, because at the end of the day, we're a team of 5 or 6 guys that are actually like in the shop working. It's
Yeah.
like 2 to 3 assembly guys, one person packing and shipping everything, and then it's Russ and Todd,
packer.
the 2 engineers, and then me, and we all wear so many hats. So Russ manages all the logistics of the business,
Sure.
all the big emails, racing team collaborations. Todd is like pretty much all the person that manages like inventory, all the designs of like smaller parts like shift knobs, all that jazz, equipment, and like getting state of the art improvements on the
Sure.
assembly line. And then we got like all these people that can assemble, pack, do all kinds of stuff in terms of just like everyone wears some. And then you have me, and like, oh well, you have to do the marketing, you have to do customer service as well.
Yep.
And he was actually a big. Early on, I didn't have enough hours accumulated to actually pay my bills in terms of just editing. And so a big decision I made that he offered was, do you want to take on customer service too? And I actually still appreciate doing customer service because it gives you another connection to your content that you don't expect.
Right,
And
you hear
it's-
like similar problems, and you're like, "Wait, this is something I
Yes.
could address on Instagram, or
Yes.
I could address this on TikTok, or
and
whatever."
and I'll tell you, people are more vocal about problems than they are things that are good.
Oh, for sure.
So when there's an issue with something like a torque spec or something like that, frankly, I'm
I'm
glad
a
that
raging bitch.
Right? Yeah. Like people get angry with you when something goes wring, and the most challenging thing is to
Well,
let-
I spent $14 on this shift boot. And no, that's great though. I mean, that's the thing that gives you insight into something that most companies would be so separated. That would be like the most boring conference call of your week.
Yep.
And you'd have to be like, all right, and what do we have today? Well, here's the Pareto chart of all the problems that we're having.
Yeah.
And, so what's next before we get into what's next for you, I want to talk about what's going on with this racing season
Yes,
with
sir.
Eddie.
going on
because
with, well, it involves him, so
It does. So-
But yeah, I've been rambling my mouth.
what do you got going on? When is the first Grid Life stuff coming up? When are you doing shakedowns on the car? What's going on? What's
I think the
happening?
car needs shakedown.
What's it need?
So, some decent changes are happening to the car. New suspension from Fortunato.
Oh, big stuff.
Big changes. So I've been running stock struts for years.
You hear that? Everyone
They were
thinking
blown
So
too,
everybody
right?
needed.
Towards the end.
Oh, they're blown out. They've been blown out for 2 years now, leaking,
that car rides.
pissing out the
Yeah.
back.
I just
But
think it's so
I
funny.
just make the best of it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to butt in because like your car looks the part.
Because it looks
And-
low, but it's
and-
because it's broken.
Well, no, I'm just saying. No, I'm just saying the car looks great on track, and it's so funny watching him break some hearts on track, and then when they find out that the car is pretty much stock.
Oh, it's stock.
It blows their mind.
They're like, oh, what's under the hood of that thing? You're like, acuity shift bushings.
Yeah.
yeah.
An
And, like, an
intake
intercooler.
and a catback. And a tune.
That's really funny.
I just tuned it last year,
That's-
so I was running stock for
Yeah.
years. No, so suspension,
Yep.
and then I
got
finally
brakes.
so I finally convinced myself. So last year, Powen was there. I started to realize the challenges that those stock brakes were having, especially at the bigger tracks when you're going 140 miles an hour.
Yeah.
They would melt.
Absolutely.
Literally, the pads would melt. The caliper would literally catch on fire.
The Brembo logo would become like
Black.
opaque.
It would
and,
be-
like,
they're
yeah,
called
like yellow.
Brambos.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the
Oh,
term.
yeah. No, the
Yeah.
paint. You changed the color of that paint quick. That
And-
was within the first month of owning
And
the
you
car.
can basically I've narrowed it down to about 10 to 15 for me anyways track days on those calipers before they need to be replaced.
because
So
the seals start breaking.
everything
and-
goes. The
Yeah.
seals go. It starts to weep. At the last event at Gingerman, they were weeping. I'd have to close the valves.
Oh my God,
Yeah,
really?
we would have to. I would have to close
Just
them
tighten
because they
them
would
up, snag
weep.
them up.
Yeah.
So this is the
Wow.
problem where people think that like, oh, I'm getting a big brake kit so I can stop better, but like, no, every brake on every car, unless you're like driving a legitimate death trap, should be able to lock a wheel, right? Like
Yeah.
even if you have
Yeah.
shitty brakes, what people don't realize is that they need to be able to like a race car brake. It's not so it brakes. It's not so it stops the car better. It's so it stops the car better after like unbelievable abuse. Like it's
Exactly.
repeated heating, cooling, and the cooling needs to be able to happen. If you've got a caliper that's maybe it's a 6-pot caliper, it's a great Brembo, it's this beautiful thing. But if that caliper doesn't have the cooling characteristics to allow it to rebound, and then the seals aren't actually designed for that kind of heat,
Precisely.
that's where everything goes to
Yeah,
shit.
I mean, from an engineering standpoint, those Brembos are perfectly fine for 99% of
Sure.
the people buying that car. Like most people, they think those brakes are amazing, and they are.
They are.
They are fantastic brakes. They work really well for 3 laps.
Right. And
And
that's the
then-
thing. People don't understand what
No.
a hot lap means, and this blows my mind because like I can waste it. The M3 stock brakes. I wouldn't even be able to get through an entire lap at Palmer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I was explaining. I forget who I was explaining it to. Like a friend of mine who just didn't understand why I would upgrade the brakes because most people are like those are huge brakes.
Yeah.
But so I'm going with a Paragon Performance big brake kit.
Okay.
They're the ones that are on the 11th gen Civic Si endurance cars that are also. I think Acuity has some parts on those cars as well.
Yes, I think the really cool thing about Russell is he's got these connections with HPD.
Mm-hmm.
And like,
I
on
know the
engineers.
HPD guys now.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure. Like,
David Salters.
Why?
He's
names
like
don't
the
ring a bell.
he's
If
the
you-
president of HPD.
Well,
if you
I
talk to
need to
Russ,
get
like, I'm sure
in
you guys
touch
can
with
definitely.
David.
Yeah.
He is
So,
basically like the Andy Pruniger of Honda. Like
wow,
he's
cool.
like the guy that runs the GT department at Porsche.
That's awesome.
This dude is so effing cool.
So
It
yeah,
is
so
funny.
let's get
Yeah.
back to
Okay,
Grid Life.
I'm
Okay,
sorry.
so we're doing 5 events, or I'm doing 5 events. I don't know if Pound's coming with me for all of them, but the main one is Midwest Fest, which is in June.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's Autobahn, which is in Illinois.
I know Autobahn.
And then we're doing New Jersey,
And then Lime Rock.
and then I'm doing what's the next one? Mid Ohio,
Oh, right,
which is
Mid-Ohio.
my favorite track.
All right. Well, I'll definitely get the Lime Rock.
and then
one.
Lime Rock.
Definitely the Lime.
Lime Rock's the last one for me, which is in August.
I
So-
definitely want to do Lime Rock. I wouldn't mind if I have some time helping you out because I always feel guilty when you're driving across the country and then you have to race the next day.
We've gotten it down to a science.
I
but that would be
know, but like
awesome.
I would rather you just sleep in the back and
That'd be
I
amazing.
can bang out like 6 or 7 hours of driving.
It's funny
and-
because I am not comfortable driving the rig.
Yeah, Pound doesn't.
I
like,
feel bad because it's just like, oh, I'm just riding in the back seat, just like, like I
Just
pay
back
for
there
the gas,
checking
you know.
emails and
yeah,
stuff.
just
He's got his
editing
TV,
videos. You
yeah.
know, it would be more fun if there were more people in the rotation. Because like I feel terrible watching you guys
not that
drive,
bad.
and I'm just like, you guys aren't sleeping.
That's going to do it for today. I'm sorry. That was like a very bizarre conclusion to the podcast. We ran and ran and ran, and there was no natural conclusion. So I just had to cut it. I just had to say, all right, we're done. This is the thing. We have talked about enough. And, I can always sit down and talk to them for hours. And especially because the 3 of us are just complete scatterbrains, it's very easy to do that. It's very easy to do that. And anyway, I'm looking forward to spending more time with them in the field. I want to go to a Grid Life event with both of them. Hopefully that's going to be Lime Rock at the very least. If not, a nice long road trip in the SRT Durango towing Eddie's 10th gen Civic Type R race car alongside our friend Powen. So we'll see how that goes this spring and summer. Thank you guys so much for supporting the YouTube channel, the Patreon page. Really, if you're giving $1 a month or $10 a month, it all adds up. It really helps keep a lot of this stuff alive. It keeps me feeling a lot more confident and comfortable, keeping gas in the cars, making things happen. It's amazing. Thanks for listening to the Respect the Drive. Let's try that again. Thanks for listening to the Respect the Drive podcast. I'm Tedward. I'll see you in the next one. And don't you forget to respect the drive.